So listen, what I wanted to just go through very briefly here was a bit about this azimuthal equidistant projection.
Cool.
Let me just throw this up. Hope you can see my screen.
And we're not claiming this is the fucking flat Earth, by the way.
No, exactly. No, that's...
Okay, so now that we've got onto the bit that I want to share with you, that he makes a point of talking to Del about this in this hangout so everybody gets to know about it. Notice that again he goes to Wikipedia for his source of information.
So can you see that all right?
I can see fine.
Right. So the azimuthal equidistant projection is one of those maps that they try and attribute to the flat Earth, right?
Yeah.
As part of their... Basically have different ways of, intimately tied together with each other.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to force you to sit and watch this whole section of the video, and if you really want to see it, you're more than welcome to go and look at the hangout. You can see the name of it on the screen, so it's entirely up to you. But the point is, he goes to the trouble basically explaining how the AE map works, what the view is on it. And the reason for doing that is because he can then lead on to sharing with Del that he feels that he has debunked a video by Wolfie. And that's the point I want to get to.
And here they're basically coming a little bit... And so on an azimuthal projection, if you want to find out the distance to something or the direction to something, then the only thing that is valid is from the center of the projection. The only thing you can do with it is check your direction and your distance, from this fundamental point,
Yeah.
Now, what that means is that I can't just take an arbitrary red line between any 2 points, right?
Yep.
Let's say the bottom of Africa and where the hell's Hawaii, out here somewhere, right? Or here. You can't just take any 2 arbitrary points and say that this is the true direction. I'll say it again, you can only measure from the center point, then your directions will be correct, yeah? I'm saying this because there's one little video I want to highlight from a well-known globe defender, somebody that they seem to hold in very high esteem, right? And he's showing a video trying to debunk the flat Earth by showing a flat Earth map, and drawing an arbitrary red line between 2 points and saying that it can't work on a flat Earth, right?
Yep.
I'm highlighting this, Del, just to show how fucking easy it is and how boring these people are.
Yeah.
That we've seen the same old arguments, right, about straw men maps and models, right,
Yep.
which this guy is producing. And not only that, is he doesn't even understand what it is he's trying to debunk, because you can't draw arbitrary red lines and think that these are true directions, And I've said it here, I don't know what's worse, a globe gobbler defending his religious belief by setting up a straw man argument, or a pilot who can't use maps properly, right?
Right, so that's enough. You get the idea of what he's done here and what he's saying. Now, his complaint is that Wolfie has chosen an AE map and then tried to use it incorrectly as a straw man argument against Flat Earth by drawing this arbitrary direction. But that's actually a straw man of what Wolfie is really doing in the video that he's made. Now, I'm sure most of you have probably seen Wolfie's video, and if you haven't, go and check it out. But he hasn't just randomly picked an AE map. The whole point of what Wolfie's doing in this video is that he's debunking the information being supplied by people who do use the AE map as if it represents Flat Earth, namely Dirth and whoever else agrees with the app. It's the free app that they've produced using the AE map as if it represents Flat Earth and showing sun direction in this case. And Wolfie was pointing out that if you use that app using the AE map, you can't use it to get a true direction to the sun from wherever you are standing on the Earth. What you see in the app doesn't match up to reality. Wolfie in no way was trying to claim that the map itself could be used to give an accurate direction. It's essentially the point of his video that it can't, and that the app is a failure because it relies on the AE map. But this so-called fucking genius, this self-appointed genius who thinks he's so much smarter than everybody else, doesn't even understand what Wolfie was debunking, and he's created a complete straw man by entirely misrepresenting what Wolfie is doing here, because all he's done obviously is taking a screenshot and then giving you a narrative of what's happening rather than actually giving a true representation of what Wolfie was doing in his video. So again, we have to come back to this thing where, did he understand what Wolfie was doing in his video and merely set out to deceive everyone? Or is he just that fucking stupid? Or is it some bizarre mix of the both, that he's too fucking stupid to understand what's going on in the first place, but still sneaky and devious enough to still present his misconception in a way that makes sure everybody else falls in line with the party line? Doesn't matter. Any way you look at it, Gav's a fucking tool. Alright, so let's just take a quick little look at Gav's channel to see what fantastic information he's been putting out there in the realm of natural, practical, tangible science. So here we have the video which we've just been talking about, that he wanted to make sure all the followers over on Del's channel, because he's got apparently 17k subscribers as opposed to Gav's 600 or so. He thinks he's debunked Wolfie and it's complete horseshit. Now, this is just a longer version of what we were looking at, but as you can see in his own video, he again does start off by making his case using Wikipedia. This is a theme and I want to make sure people are aware of it.
Good evening, folks. I feel the need to show a couple of points here because this one is constantly used by the Globers as an art.
I'm just going to skip in a bit.
Going from the centre out, part of their plan to set up straw men maps and models. What are the pros and cons?
Now, you can see that you get the idea. He's just doing the usual fucking rhetoric about how everybody talking about these kind of flat maps is supposedly a straw man for their cult because they don't believe in maps and models, which is just a reductionist argument that people are using because they have no argument. And it is especially telling that somebody, again, a self-appointed genius, a maths, physics and geometry person who, should have the education to do simple observations and measurements and understand the geometry and see how everything tallies up, that after all this time he still has to rely on backing away from the idea of measuring reality and producing any useful real world geometry. No, we can't have that. However, that position itself, of course, is completely hypocritical because they do no work, which was a lot of what I was trying to make the point about with Gav the other day, is that he has done fuck all. He has done no science, he's done no exploration, and yet we'll keep pushing those things as part of the rhetoric. So it's pure, unadulterated hypocrisy from a weak, cowardly mind. And again, we see that all he's doing is using this image. He hasn't bothered to actually show sections of Wolfie's video to demonstrate what was really going on there. Now the thing with Gav is, he has a bee in his bonnet about Wolfie, but he can't do anything about him, and one of the many aspects of these fuckwits' character you will see, as we know, is they hide in their echo chamber. So they'll sit and they'll make these big proclamations and assertions about other people who support the globe, like Wolfie especially, because he knows that people like Wolfie absolutely destroy all their bullshit. But do they leave to go and engage with these people? Do they go on to other hangouts or debate shows or whatever to try and put their point across and to, destroy the globe by taking it, face to face with the people that they've got a problem with? Of course they don't. They're fucking cowards. They're weak. If they had the actual intelligence and the will to really face off against what is supposedly this great deception, they would make those efforts, they would make those inroads, and they would, really want to do that. They would want to go and show how wrong everybody is. You wouldn't hide in your safe space. But that's what you actually see. So for all his talk, Gav does nothing. He produces no work. He can't face off against people, and we're going to come to a point in a minute. I'm going to go back to an old video, and I will link it in the description. And would advise anybody who's interested in seeing how well Gav can deal with a real conversation with people who understand the topic they're dealing with, go and spend the time it takes to go and read this particular thread. That I would kind of like people to go and look at an old thread, because he's got some of the terminology, he's got some of the language, but it doesn't hide what he's really all about at all. Ultimately, all he can do is divert, create red herrings, and try and avoid actually providing real information. He can't deal with an argument directly. Anyway, I'm kind of wandering off from this particular point, his channel. I think it's interesting to note here that Dirth, the tip behind the app, is in here trying to defend what Gav has done and defend his app and say, oh, yes, it does show the sun from a central point. This is missing the point of what the app is supposed to be useful for. Unless everybody on the entire Earth has suddenly moved to the fucking North Pole, then how in hell is it meant to be useful to anybody? It should be the case that if this represents the flat Earth, then obviously people on any part of the Earth using the app should be able to get accurate information from it. So this is another absolute fucktard. Not only is he screwed up by showing this app in the first place and making it like it's some kind of useful representation of reality, but by saying this here in order to defend Gav, he actually proves that his app is useless himself. You could not make it up. These guys are complete retards. But back to Gav. If I scroll, this is me on his videos, right? So this is it. This is an entire collection of available videos. You can see by the dates, year ago, right? 5 months ago, 4 months ago, 3, 1, and then a couple in the last, right? Now, some of these I recognise because all they are, again, this is what I've been saying about the guy. The guy is all about language. He's about manipulating people through language. He's about trying to redefine language and push ideas into people's minds. He doesn't ever actually walk the walk. He talks the talk, but he never actually practices what he preaches. He'll sit and produce things like this. These are made with, obviously, with a focus to program it into Dell's script and get it all pushed out there on the Behind the Learning Curve channel. This is just, again, it's all words. And it's all about him trying to produce, force his way of thinking about language. And this actually isn't even his way of thinking. What he's doing is he's taking the basic concept from other people's philosophy. And in particular, he likes to refer to Thomas Reid. But if I just skip through, you can see it's all about trying to define specific words, and obviously level is one of the ones that they really don't like, that it doesn't mean flat and horizontal. And notice that you've got this perfect example of the kind of stunted thinking that comes from your typical flat earther, represented in this graphic that he's used. And I'll say it again, if the guy supposedly understands physics and geometry and so on, you would never ever refer to something this stupid. To think of this concept of down being south. So over and over and over again we see that Gav has no intelligence, and at least not the kind of intelligence that leads to smart thinking. Perhaps the intelligence that leads to devious thinking, but he's not saying anything true or real and being smart in the way that we think it. He's just trying to program people who are not as smart as him. Through the use of language, through the use of text, he tries to program people into thinking a certain way, and that is a very stunted and ignorant way of looking at things, which is demonstrably false. And it's just pure flat earthism. But he doesn't get any of this information from his own way of thinking. This isn't thinking that he's come up with himself. If you look at where he actually gets his information from, it's things like Zetetic Astronomy, Thomas Reid, and so on. It's never an original thought. But he's able to put it together in such a way that he sounds as though he's more intelligent or more clued up on the subject. The actual information is absolute garbage, but the terminology employed and the method of putting it out there makes it seem a bit more viable, and if you're a gullible or very stupid person, you will fall for it, and that's why he's latched onto somebody like Del. So there was a series of these kind of videos, and this is a really idiotic one where he was complaining that 0 isn't a number. I mean, look, how long is it? Nearly 8 minutes long. Text. Silly little graphics. All about trying to reprogram your brain into thinking about a specific word and how it's used, and changing your mind about how it ought to be used. So it's all about the manipulation of language. So we all know this is basically part of the script these days for Del, and has been for a long time. And you can see that Gav has a lot to do with the specific wording of the script, the rhetoric that they use, and it's all about, this idiotic idea they have that there's no debate, there's only discussion, which in itself is just a play on language. It's semantics, because whichever way you want to treat it, as debate or discussion, at the end of the day, nobody says that whatever reality is itself is up for discussion, but our concept of what reality is technically up for discussion to a point. In other words, because people can have the wrong idea about something, it's entirely reasonable to say that there is a debate to be had there, or there's a discussion to be had there about it. But what they're doing is assuming that they're right about something with zero evidence, with faulty logic, and employing a fallacious argument, this thing here, to say, well, reality isn't what you think it is what we think it is. Therefore, there's no debate, there's only discussion. They don't actually identify what reality is. Again, they don't have maps or models. They shy away from that idea because they know it kicks them in the balls. And they don't have any experiments, they don't have any data to work with, they've done no natural science, which they keep pushing. So they have nothing to bring to any debate or any discussion that will help any person truly understand the nature of the reality if they have any confusion about it. Whereas all the people on the other side of this, the people who know and will say it's a globe, that comes from real world data. It isn't just an idea that's in someone's head. It comes from observation and measurement. And it obviously comes from the continued development of science and technology that we've been experiencing for the last so many centuries, which has led us to the point we live in the space age and the telecommunication age. All these things count towards the various pieces of evidence that build up what we refer to as the globe model. But these guys have nothing but this. They have philosophy and rhetoric. And so this is the only way they can try and get certain people to think their way. They have to sit and program you with little videos like this, trying to use language again to mess around. And all of this information, the first principles thing and all this, that's not Gav's idea. That is the philosophy of Thomas Reid, because Gav has no original thought of his own. And that in itself is another contradictory aspect of Gav's philosophy, because the entire point is supposed to be that you don't refer to authority and you don't believe what someone else tells you to say, and yet all this guy can do is regurgitate Thomas Reid's philosophy, because he is believing in what Thomas Reid says and doing what Thomas Reid is telling him to do. And then he's going on to repeat it and trying to get other people to do the same thing. So now he wants other people to listen to him and do what he's telling them to do. Again, it goes on. It's just text after text. It's all language and semantics about how to approach observing the world. But all of this stuff is completely irrelevant and can be thrown right out the window when it gets compared to real world science, to real world observation, to real world data. None of which these guys have. Right, so with this one you can see that he's even used the behind the learning curve logo and all this kind of stuff. So these were a series that he put together, and then the whole idea was to share it through Del, get Del to think that way, get Del's audience to think that way, and they all hail him as a fucking genius. Anyway, so this one is all about the Socratic method as put together by Gav, again using an external source. He had to go to a website, get information from it, and then use that to put together a presentation. So again, it doesn't come from his own understanding of it. He has to go away and refer to another source. And the whole point of this is to actually put together a kind of framework for people. This is what Del is, effectively using in his street interviews, and that was the idea behind it, was to give other people this framework for going out into the street and conning other people into agreeing with them on bad points. For example, you watch any one of Dale's interview things and you can see one of the common tactics that he uses, and that you'll see like a John Smith Globe Lie, a former Deltard, blah blah. They will, for example, show someone a photograph and say it's the Loch Ness Monster, and get them to agree that because that can't be true, that therefore a photograph is not to be used as evidence. But then in the same series of questioning and inquiry, they will turn round at a later point and use various images to prove their point and to push the idea that people are out there with the P900 proving the globe false every day and all this stuff, because they're complete hypocrites and they can't help themselves. But by making this point to begin with at the beginning of the so-called interview, using this method they've outlined, it's a way to get people to surrender a piece of information and so that they can't use it as a counter argument. So it's just pure underhanded way of trying to win an argument. You're not winning the argument through the strength of your logic or the strength of your own data. So anyway, I'll just kind of click through this as well. You can see that he's just went on and used information that he's got from this website, put it together in a kind of flowchart style. The general idea behind it was to demonstrate to people how to create these just really bad, flawed arguments, but present them to people in such a way, as I've said, that it helps to undermine the other person's position and put them off kilter. Is this science? Is this practical? Is this tangible? Of course it fucking isn't. So far we haven't seen any science, and we certainly haven't seen any practical examples of natural science. There's nothing tangible to be found on Gav's channel.
Euclid is revered by and held in high esteem by the powers that be. It's about our mind-body reality.
So in this video, just by flicking through it, you can see he's trying to make another point based with just images and text and references from various people's philosophy and text in this case, it's about geometry, and then goes on to share some of his own images which are computer generated inside a software program. So it's not one I've watched, but I'm not going to watch it. What I'm getting at here is, again, there's no science here. There's no direct observable data that we can use. There's nothing tangible again. It's all about him trying to push his philosophy on geometry. It's not actual real world practical geometry that matters in any way, something that we can go out and test for ourselves. It's all about how do we look at geometry, which version of geometry do we stick with, which is the right one, and so on. It's a philosophical look at geometry and another attempt to program the cult into believing in a certain way of looking at things. Now, when we come to this video 5 months ago, this was a hangout where he essentially just wanted to push his version of the geometry of the eye and this concept of being able to see things disappearing from bottom up and so on. Now, at the time, he shared all this information with a couple of other idiots, including one of the other people who's also responsible for pushing this bullshit, Sakari Zabala or whatever his name is, Good Times for All, another absolute fucking clown who talks nonsense and talks about concepts he really doesn't understand. The thing is, when Gavs puts together these kind of presentations, they're technical enough that people who don't really understand it will generally, think that he's done a brilliant job. But as we've seen with this example of the paper that he produced, which again was really just reworded robot and bullshit, you can always find a flaw because ultimately he's trying to push something that's false and patently absurd. But again, what is he actually doing that's actually tangible? It's all at his computer. It's all text. It's all talk. It's all repeating other person's philosophies. It's all computer generated diagrams and so on and so on. Nothing that this guy does actually fits with the rhetoric that he pushes every single week on Behind the Learning Curve with Del. And this particular one, some people were pushing it at the time. I made another video a little while back, and I pointed out that his mistake in particular that stood out when I didn't watch the whole thing, just the bit that I saw that somebody shared, was that he was doing an old Flairford trick of confusing the angle of a horizontal surface and how narrow or acute that would be with the angle that would be seen on a vertical surface or object, and to trying to make it seem as though those two angles were the same, and therefore that's why something would disappear bottom up because of the angle at the surface. So confusing horizontal and vertical angles, a complete load of bullshit. And that's pretty funny considering he called this the Great Switcheroo, because that's what he really did. I would say he did a clever switch, but I don't think it was that clever. Again, it just comes down to the point that the people who are watching this kind of stuff, they want to believe it, so they don't look for flaws. And the majority of them, they're too fucking stupid to understand what the flaws are. And that's his audience, that's who he's aiming it at. So to them, he's some big maths and geometry genius. To me and most other people, he's just another fucking clown. So you can see here we've got more of this stuff that he's talking about. I'm not going to click into that one. Another one, more philosophy, repeating the same bullshit. So, this one, just going over some more of his old shit about maths not being reality. It's just a formal language and all this stuff. Again, it's all about taking a philosophical stance against the things that will actually prove flat earth wrong. That's all that comes down to. Again, it's all talk, it's all text. So far, still no tangible, practical examples of anything on Gav's channel. Funny that, huh? What's this? This has got lots of pictures of the real world. I wonder what this might be.
When I think back on all the crap that I used to believe in,
Yes, that's right. An absolutely fucking awful song, performed really badly by a complete twat. Nothing to do with science at all. Awesome contribution.
Yeah, so this is just a short message to express my opinions on belonging to groups, trusting people, and the monetization of the truth.
Right, so there we go. We don't need to watch that one. It's his opinion on something, and it's just this bullshit that comes out from, you know, arguments that Dell's having with people who say that there should be unity and all this shit. Complete nonsense that's got, again, nothing to do with reality and nothing tangible, practical or scientific we can apply to help us understand our reality. And then, last video that we can look at. This is just a series of bullet points pushing the rhetoric again, and you know, a little bit of what you might consider NLP. It's actually quite funny to me that he's using the spinning coin in his example here, because that's actually one of the ways that's useful to help understand the geometry of a sphere. But he obviously uses it in reverse here. But basically this is just all imagery, right? So a lot of this, and these just little sayings to say, try and convince you to think of this whole tangible thing, to think of things as planar geometry rather than spherical geometry. This is what he's all about. Now, again, this is just programming people to think a certain way. It's got nothing to do with any real practical science. It's got nothing to do with any real practical measurement. There's no data to be had here. There's no experiment we can go out and repeat. He's just trying to program people. Think like me, here's my philosophy. So, you know, again, no science, and that is really us. We're right up to date with it. So we're back to the video about Wolfie. So what's he got? What has he got in his entire channel? Absolutely fuck all. He's a complete waste of space. Nothing here will help you to go out and do anything tangible, and he has produced nothing tangible. Ever. He's a total fucking hypocrite. A vacuous muppet.